the position that you guys are taking up against me here is that like psychology comes before philosophy, right? And for me, I don't think it's quite that simple. I think sometimes philosophy actually does come before psychology. Um, However, I find it funny because this is the same position that academic agent has taken up against me. He's on your side on this one. So I've been thinking about it a little bit, actually. And I think there actually are more contemporary examples of the philosophy coming first, Adam. Okay, so here. I'm going to read this out a little bit, okay? So I looked it up, all right? So I got the history of the from the Sam Francis thing. Listen, Sam Francis is a great writer, but he's very, very racist, okay? So just yeah.
Why you want to read this racist shit on our show?
Don't read anything that's gonna get us.
Yeah,
no. I'm not gonna read anything that I'm not
go
gonna
over
read
to your
anything
channel
that'll
and read
get,
all this
I'm
racist
not gonna
shit.
read anything that'll get you taken down.
I hate
promise,
racism.
Okay?
I don't even want to hear it.
What is? I think we get the anarcho-tyranny.
Yeah, you're bumming the
You're
party
good,
here.
you're good.
Look.
I think we
Oh,
got
okay.
it.
Well,
This is supposed to be fun.
We got it.
What?
Yeah.
Your
This is
second
fun.
thought's supposed to be fun?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, this is look. This is a laugh. This is a riot fest here. This guy's insane.
okay.
Come on.
So, the reason that I bring this stuff up,
We want to laugh
right,
at
that, like,
delusional people, and Deb is like, "Let me read this Opus Maximus on racism here." It's
well,
like,
hold on.
oh,
This
come
guy's
on,
also delusional.
please.
He's also delusional, Adam.
Yeah, but
Right-wing
let's
delusion
just
is also pretty funny.
Stick on the topic here.
That's
Let's
true.
be fun.
Okay, fine. Here, give me one sentence then. I'll just say it like this,
No,
all right?
look,
The
it's boring.
reason,
No,
the
nobody
reason
wants
that
this.
I talk about random weird right-wing political theorists like Moldbug,
Because you
or
love
like
them.
Sam
Because
Francis,
you're
or like,
hiding your power level.
am I hiding my power level? That's what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe
no.
I don't know.
No,
Are
the
you?
main reason is because it's when you only understand the left wing. No, here, come on. When you only understand the left wing writers,
why are you stuttering? Why are you taking so long? What's going
I'm
on
thinking
here?
about it because my brain works slowly. Okay, listen. When you only
This just
understand
became
the
a
left
struggle
wing writers,
section.
when you only understand left wing writers, and you only watch far left pieces of shit like second thought here, yeah. It's very easy to understand their writers and their ideas because they're so culturally common. You see them fucking everywhere, right? But you have equally crazy right-wing people who are putting out equally crazy political theories in response to the craziness, and like I feel like no one knows about them, and they're in my opinion just as important because so many right-wingers talk about these theories even if they don't understand them or you don't even know where they're getting them from. There's like diffusing down through Tim Pool or something, and it's just like there's a conversation happening between two very radical groups of people, but only one radical group's being heard, if that makes sense. And I think it's important to understand the radicalism of the other group.
I agree completely.
I don't. The difference though that I have is, I think Dev is looking at it at a purely philosophical level, which I don't think is very insightful. So, that's my critique.
Here, just out of curiosity, Adam, who do you think is more incorrect about that philosophy that you don't like so much? Was it Marx or Moldbug?
More incorrect about what?
Yeah.
In general.
Incorrect how? I mean, what are we talking about? Philosophically or psychologically?
Yeah, philosophically. Like less truth value.
Lay out the philosophical differences that you see.
Gee, how long do you want me to take?
Well, let's not. Actually.
I don't know if I can answer this question.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd have to have read a lot more Moldbug and Marx.
I'm bringing it back to Moldbug, chat. We're going back.
Do you understand the criticism that I'm making of you though? The philosophical difference between the psychological difference?
Yeah. You believe that like the philosophy is downstream from psychology and like a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, obviously a lot of
the
so a psychological profile is what's driving the ship, and then the philosophy comes in to justify that. And you're looking at the philosophy as a justification and really kind of avoiding what's driving the ship, which is that's my basic critique of a lot of stuff that you're coming out. So you're like, you want to read us this long diatribe about the philosophical justification for something, and I don't find it particularly insightful.
Well, I think you're partially correct, but I think that you're definitely understating the effect that philosophy has.
No, philosophy does have obviously an effect on things, because whatever there's different side effects of what philosophy you're going to justify things with. Obviously, like religion is a type of philosophy. If your justification is going to be, you believe in God and God said this is the way to behave, that's going to create all kinds of different side effects. And if you're saying my philosophy is based in logic and reason and I want evidence to prove these things, I mean, you can come up with evidence, but sometimes that evidence is, specious, incorrect, not really true. Yeah. And that can have different side effects depending upon what the evidence is. I'm when I'm talking about, this idea that the world is all oppressors and oppressed, and it's just a matter of going around and finding out where each individual fits, whether they're an oppressor or an oppressed category. I think that obviously has side effects, and that philosophy is going to create different side effects in some sort of religious philosophy.
So here's let me put it this way. I completely lost my train of thought. God damn it! It's all okay. Gone. It's all gone. No. But oh no! I got it back.
What do you think this?
I got it back. No.
Hold on.
I got it back.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
I don't want you to forget. Go ahead. Go. Say it.
Okay. Remember Sitch, when we were talking about Moldbug in the second Moldbug stream, you mentioned something along the lines of it makes complete sense that he thinks like this because his parents and his grandparents were actually communist spies for the USSR. And that has colored all of his politics and all of his critiques on history and all this stuff.
Right.
So that's like the psychology kind of overriding his philosophy in a sense, from your point of view, I think. But I don't think it's that simple because a lot of his writing, even if that was like his experience as a child, which is psychological in some senses, kind of led him down this anti-communist path. The philosophy that he wrote, you can still judge that independent of his own life experience.
Sure. I think, yeah. And to be clear, I think what I'm saying, which I agree with to an extent, is that, usually people come to their conclusion first via psychology, via whatever emotional, moral, psychological influences are impacting them. And then they kind of post hoc create a philosophy to justify the answer they want, essentially.
Yes.
I think that's why Adam is saying he finds the philosophy aspects of it kind of less interesting because it's just a post hoc rationalization.
Right. Also, you're not even really focusing on the side effects, which is something Sitch and I will dive into because that is the relevant factor here. You kind of get caught up in the justification as if it's something interesting. And I'm like, well, of course they need to justify.
Well, just to be clear before you respond, just be clear. I think, I mean, I personally think that it can be interesting to go into the philosophy, even though I do think it's post hoc rationalization. Because I mean, like with the CRT stuff, I mean, it's all post hoc rationalization to justify people being angry at white people or to feel like they want to blame society instead of their own problems, blah, 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 blah. But I still think it's interesting, at least personally, to kind of go into the philosophy and kind of like tear it apart and to try to understand what the justifications are.
Well, I don't necessarily think you're doing any like service there because, I mean, you're not going to argue them out of. I mean, you can point out philosophical inconsistencies, but
the goal isn't to argue the CRT people out of it. The goal is, and I do think this is true, I think that there are people who are more in the middle of things who, if you rip the philosophy to shreds, will not adopt it.
Okay, yeah, that
as
makes
the
sense.
answer to their question. Because there's a lot of answers to the question of like wanting to blame society that could lead you in a bunch of different ways, and some are more destructive than others.
What is the psychology driving? So I've laid out that people want to separate the world into oppressor and oppressed. Right. What is the psychology that makes somebody engage in that activity?
It's a couple of things. It's wanting to blame society for all your problems.
Right.
Number one.
So are they ever on the oppressor side of that equation, or are they always end up on? Okay.
Well, actually, some can be, because I think a lot of this from people that are white is like this sort of guilt.
Okay.
You know, the Robin DiAngelo like white guilt perspective.
Right. Okay, I guess you're right. Yeah.
You know, they feel guilty for whatever reasons in their life, and so they feel like this is some way to like extract penance from themselves and make themselves feel better. So I mean, I don't know if there's probably not like a one simple answer, because I think a lot of people have a lot of different reasons why they adopt all these various things psychologically.
Yeah, that's an interesting. So if they're in the white guilt category, they view themselves as an oppressor, and if they're in the oppressed category, they obviously look at things differently. So, do you want to respond to any of this, Deb, before we move on?
So it's just one thing I noticed, if to go back a few sentences, is that the position that you guys are taking up against me here is that like psychology comes before philosophy, right? And for me, I don't think it's quite that simple. I think sometimes philosophy actually does come before psychology. However, I find it funny because this is the same position that Academic Agent has taken up against me. He's on your side on this one. So it was weird to see that Adam and Sitch have become best friends with Academic Agent.
Nazis drank water too. I don't know why you're
against innocent Dev.
I don't know why you're taking the second thought mode of attack here.
Well, I know, because I mean, Academic Agent, he's I'm trying to remember, because he knows about height, and he was like, oh, I'm trying to shake their elephants loose before I tell them the truth, which was like, that doesn't make any sense. That's like the exact opposite of what you want.
So
specious attacks aside, where is an example of philosophy coming first? Because I'm super interested in that.
This isn't necessarily an attack. Okay, so for example,
necessarily. Okay.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Maybe you guys might think it is.
Not being so specious.
You guys think it is. I don't think it is. But so he said, for example, action precedes theory, and this devastates most people. The example he gave was that syndicalism came about before Sorel wrote about syndicalism. And so if you have people who are sitting down and writing new political theories, they're not generating new ideas. They're observing trends that are happening around them, and they're trying to codify them into something that can then be used. So, for example, like John Locke didn't write about classical liberalism, and then like suddenly, no one in the world is a liberal. John Locke has the idea. He writes it down. The pamphlets get distributed, and then people become liberals. What's happening is there's a trend happening in society. John Locke looks at it. He sees things changing. He thinks about it, and he writes out what he thinks is going on. He writes out liberalism, and then he codifies the change in people's behavior that he's seeing. And so this happens to be the case for a lot of political theorists. Is like Marx did this as well, to a lesser extent though, because he also made some predictive elements that just didn't come true. So he tried to but the one example where it didn't happen this way was Mussolini's fascism. And that's kind of important, is that like Mussolini's fascism was like directionless, lawless street violence until they managed to actually get a more coherent fascist ideology like written by theorists. And then like his movement came together, and the state came together, and the ideas of what they should do next, it actually organized as a result of the philosophy.
That's interesting. Wow. I don't know.
So I think you guys are probably mostly correct in that the philosophy serves to just post hoc justify the psychology, but I definitely think there's instances where the philosophy comes first, and also that they kind of reinforce each other. Where like if you have like the initial psychological impulse, and then somebody writes the philosophy will in turn generate more psychological impulses that are of the same kind.
You're just saying that the philosophy came first chronologically. You're not saying that.
No. You said the opposite.
Well, he's saying
second.
Well, he's saying somebody writes out the philosophy and then people adopt it. But I mean, I would just say people adopt it because the psychology drove them to adopt it. So
here's the enlightened centrist position. I found it out. We'll use liberalism as a good example. Okay, you have someone like John Locke and all these other liberals. They're observing these changes in the economic structures of these countries, and also the social and cultural structures of the country, and they're kind of like looking around at like what people are just kind of naturally tending towards. And so John Locke sits down and he kind of tries to intuit out what's happening, and he comes up with liberalism and all these principles of liberalism. Right? Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yes, and then after those, after that writing
let me
is
just finish.
distributed.
Let me just finish. I just want to make sure that we're on the same like fact basis. Okay, so then, but I think what happens when this is where the power of the philosophy comes in is that before it's given a name and before like the rules of the philosophy are stated, people are just kind of like intuitively doing something. And when you're intuitively doing something, it can be very easy to just fall prey to tribalism, fall prey to emotion, fall prey to some non-principled position because there's nothing there. You're just intuiting it.
Tradition,
so then when you have someone like John Locke come and he says, this thing that you're all intuiting, we're calling it liberalism. And here are the rules and principles of it. I think that is kind of what you were saying, Dev, that like reinforces and kind of locks people into kind of like the rules of the philosophy that they've been kind of intuiting out until that point.
Right. If you're just trying to maximize your own individual freedom and people around you are doing the same, until you label what you're doing, you can't really constructively focus on doing it effectively and cooperative, in cooperation with others.
Right.
And I also do think though that whatever psychological impulses that are driving that intuition, they become much stronger after you have something that is rational that also goes behind it.
Yeah, I think it's not that it's rational. I think it's that once people can like
codify
onto what it is, it's kind of like we were talking about at the beginning, where the reason they're like want to demonize cultural Marxism is because it's difficult to fight or even support something if you can't grab hold of it in your mind and like give it a name and understand what exactly the thing is that you're doing.
Right.
So I've been thinking about it a little bit actually, and I think there actually are more contemporary examples of the philosophy coming first, Adam. Like the idea coming before the psychology.
Well, that's why I said
the psychology being adapted by the idea.
You're just talking chronologically, though. Like I would say that. Look, obviously, there's a lot of different people in the world. So the people, their personal psychology could be driving the philosophy. They articulate it, but it doesn't. That psychology doesn't reach the masses until it does. Something happens that activates that psychology in the people, and they pick up the philosophy. So I don't know.
I think a great example of the opposite is Trump derangement syndrome.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, like if you remember, until basically 2020, Trump really didn't do anything that crazy. Like he was honestly just kind of like a seat warmer. He didn't really do anything at all for the first few years. And yet you had people who were just riling themselves up over literally nothing and like losing it. And then like writing articles, and then those articles get retweets, and they're like they're looking at each other's like writing, and
what's the philosophy and what's the psychology?
They're losing it over literally nothing.
Well, wait. Well, first of all, I take issue with only pointing 2020 because I think what he did with Zelensky was kind of insane in the first impeachment. Withholding foreign aid to try to get them to announce investigations in Burisma just so he could attack Joe Biden in 2019.
Was that 2018? Oh, I thought that was
2019. That's 2019.
2019.
But,
okay, no, you're fair enough. Okay, fine. How about this? How about the first 2 years? The first 2 years, then.
Right. But the thing the reason people got so triggered about Trump before any of that stuff happened was just because he came out and he basically said a bunch of like crazy shit and acted in ways in which people didn't expect presidents to say or act. And then he won, and no one could believe he won, and their brains broke and their worldview shattered.
Yeah, immediately the night of the election.
Right. So I guess I don't understand how that's an element.
Don't you remember the Lacey Green video when she came out the next day and was like,
I do.
Right. Because to me, that's very clearly an example of the psychology.
Yes.
First. So.
I don't know, because like.
And then we labeled it TDS.
Like I've seen so many people just not immediately after the election, but like over the course of the next year or two, just gradually lose their mind. All right. And nothing was even happening. Right. But they just went nuts, like out of fucking nowhere.
Because the media kept pushing like he's racist, he's doing all this crazy stuff, and like after time those stories are gonna like weigh.
He's a Russian asset.
He's a Russian asset, Russia collusion.
Yeah, but like the idea that here's the thing, like none of that was true, at least not initially. I think Trump also lost his mind over the course of presidency too. But like in like 2017, that shit wasn't true. They were just pushing it because they could.
Right, but
they pushed it, and then it did change people's thoughts about Trump, and then thoughts about electoralism and the world around them, even though it wasn't true.
Yeah, but okay, what I'm saying is the people that were pushing it, I think, were motivated by psychology, not philosophy. Number one. And then the people that were like the consuming public of media that started to believe it, I don't know. I personally wouldn't classify people buying fake news stories about Trump-Russia collusion or something. I wouldn't call that like a philosophical effect. I just say that's like propaganda having an effect on someone.
Dev, this is a conversation I actually wanted to have on Tuesday, so we can just like think about it. And
sorry about that.
Okay, we can talk about it.
Well, no. I'm saying, but think on it and try to.
Here.
You're obviously putting, I feel, too much weight on the philosophy, and I want to convince you that you're doing that.
Okay. Let's just have a long stream from now all the way through until
no, that's not gonna happen.
But no,
we'll just do the whole
48-hour stream. I don't think so. No.
Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.